Join Marty Johnson, the holistic health practitioner and founder of Total Health Nutrition Center in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, as he delivers these podcasts to enlighten you and give you hope that there are health solutions to conditions that seem difficult to resolve, or even better answers than a medical approach of prescribing a chemical drug, which most times is nothing more than a Band-Aid fix, rather than getting to the root cause of your problem. The mission of the Total Health podcast is to provide the education and support that will lead to transforming people's healths so they can live a much more efficient, productive, and happier life the way God intended it to be. Join him now for his latest podcast.
Hello, Marty Johnson here, and we're going to talk about digestion today on this podcast. Digestion is a much more complex topic to talk about, really, than it may appear. But today we're going to talk about the fact that it may seem like an obvious fact, but digestion is a north to south process, starting at the mouth and eventually, as you know, ending up at the anus, where we get rid of waste material. And the reason that we want to acknowledge the fact that it's a north to south process is that many times we could be having symptoms, or a person could be having symptoms that might appear to be, in an area like, let's say, in the bowel with constipation, or maybe, in the stomach. But the fact that the digestion is a north-south process, anything north of that area being affected may be the cause of why that lower, part is affected. So we have to consider the whole digestive system when we're dealing with ailments or issues or symptoms of digestively speaking. So the first area that we want to look at is the mouth. Obviously, digestion starts in the mouth. We chew our food, and that is the first actual opportunity to start breaking down food and masticating it. And so therefore, it's very important that we do chew our food thoroughly and not trying to eat too quickly where we're swallowing it before the food is chewed thoroughly. The other aspect that we want to consider is that when we're chewing food, we need to be considering how stressed we are while we're eating. So even though you're chewing food well, if you're under a lot of stress, the body is in a more fight or flight state, which means that the nervous system is kind of in an overdrive state. And the digestive system doesn't work really well in that state. It works much better when the nervous system is in a more calming state. So it's important not to be, eating, or at least if possible in this fast-paced world, not to be eating too much on the fly where we're really under stress and just eating as we go along. It's great if you can possibly, sit down, just take some deep breaths, and take a few minutes and eat and relax a bit, so that you can digest better. Now, while we're chewing this food and in the mouth, there's salivary glands. Another name for that clinically would be parotid glands, P-A-R-O-T-I-D, parotid glands. And those parotid glands or salivary glands are obviously producing saliva, and they produce enzymes called amylase that actually break down starches into simple sugars. Actually, 30% of starch digestion takes place in the mouth. So we want to make sure that those salivary glands are actually functioning well. And a lot of times we don't think about the salivary glands and how they're functioning, but in all reality, over years of your life, if we're taking in, no doubt, you probably have taken in foods that weren't completely clean or have preservatives in them, or maybe even pesticides or chemicals that are on some of the foods that sometimes we don't even know about. But these toxins can actually overload or bog down the salivary glands over time, where they don't produce as much saliva. And saliva, believe it or not, is actually a mechanism in your body that plays a role in your body's ability to detox properly. So if the saliva glands are producing less saliva, you should actually produce about a quart a day of saliva. If you're producing less saliva, as that saliva is moving through your system, it's not able to, you're not going to have the ability to actually pull out toxins as effectively. So the enzymes and the makeup of that saliva juice has an affinity to actually bind to toxins and help your body detox and eventually eliminate out through the stool. So a very important factor, one that we take serious in a clinical setting, because it can actually hinder how well a person's clearing toxins, further down into the digestive system, which could cause, anything from stomach discomfort to improper digestion further down south of the mouth and the digestive system. So once the food is masticated and broken down in the mouth, it moves through the esophageal tube and into the stomach. And then once it gets into the stomach, there's these cells in the stomach lining called parietal cells, and their responsibility is to produce hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is critical in your ability to break down proteins. So a lot of protein digestion is being taken place in the stomach. And protein, of course, is very, very important, because the main building blocks of protein, amino acids, the amino acids are a building block to pretty much, many, many tissues in the body, muscles, the building blocks of hormones, all of those things. So it's important that we break down our protein properly, not only for the reason I spoke of, but also so that your nails are healthy and your hair doesn't become brittle. Protein is very critical because it's kind of like the structure that holds everything together, overall. So with the stomach, we want to make sure that a person has sufficient hydrochloric acid. So just like the salivary glands, if there's toxins entering into the stomach from foods that we've eaten over the years, or even from the environment, the parietal cells can get overloaded with toxins and can start to produce less hydrochloric acid. And if it starts, as it produces less hydrochloric acid, actually just the opposite of what you might think, lower hydrochloric acid production or concentration in the stomach will actually cause heartburn a lot of times. So a lot of people that are dealing with reflux or heartburn actually have not enough production of hydrochloric acid. You might ask yourself, well, that doesn't make sense. What do you mean by that? How can that be? Well, if you have less hydrochloric acid production in the stomach, less concentration, and that's responsible for breaking down proteins, guess what? The proteins that you eat will actually start to putrefy in the stomach. Sometimes you might even feel that, your stomach, food feels heavier in the stomach for a longer period of time if you're not digesting those proteins as well. And they can putrefy and cause rancid acids to come up and cause that heartburn. So actually, in a clinical mindset, where, a naturopathic mindset, rather than suppressing hydrochloric acid with drugs, a lot of times the answer is giving a person the right type of hydrochloric acid or products that actually have the whole constitution of stomach juice in a pill to help improve the physiology or the strength and the physiological ability to break down those proteins so that the rancid acid backup stops happening. Also, if that takes place, it can lead to halitosis or bad breath and just a lot of bloating and gassiness and things of that nature. So hydrochloric acid can be a very important thing. The other aspect of hydrochloric acid is that, proper concentrations of hydrochloric acid is very important as a barrier to protect your body from pathogens like parasites and viruses, bacterias that can enter in through the mouth. And the hydrochloric acid really kind of burns those organisms out before they can get into the small intestine and into the body and cause havoc. So that's really a barrier and a line of defense for you. So if you have lower hydrochloric acid levels, obviously your defense mechanisms are...
Thanks for joining us today on the Total Health Podcast. If you'd like more information about how Total Health can transform your health, check them out. They would love to set up a free consultation with you over the phone. Call them at 262-251-2929 to make that appointment. Otherwise, you can check them out on the web at www.totalhealthinc.com.